financial.
So it would probably be not more than $200 million.
In the order of $150 million. I have to check the numbers, but it's much, much less.
But you also worked in India?
Yes. I worked in India in around 1990.
So then the focus was more?
The program was was actually a lot larger then. So, for instance, what we do in a specific country, given that basic philosophy, economic and social development, promoting human dignity, we want to do that everywhere. But what we actually do in each country depends on the needs and the priorities of that country. So our top priority in Pakistan is energy, because that is clearly the priority is number one when we speak to government and private sector people. In India, I'm not that well versed in all the details of the program there, but the priorities are India specific. We also have programs in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, Central Asia.
What is your largest program?
Afghanistan is our largest program.
And what is the priority there?
And Pakistan is number 2.
No, Pakistan is number 2?
In the world. What are priorities in Afghanistan?
Number 1 and 2, what is the third one?
I'm not sure. It may be Iraq.
Maybe Iraq.
Maybe Egypt. I'd have to check.
So what is the focus in Afghanistan?
Education is a high priority. Energy, health, infrastructure. Like here, we're doing road building.
And in Africa? Across Africa?
In Africa, sadly, one of the top priorities is fighting HIV/AIDS. We have a large programs in several countries to fight HIV/AIDS in Africa, where the incidence of HIV/AIDS is very high.
Which is not the focus
in Pakistan. We don't want there to be an HIV/AIDS problem, but it's right now the prevalence of HIV/AIDS in Pakistan is very, very low. So we're not working on it here.
Also in Afghanistan?
No. So but in Africa it's a priority, but not here. In this area.
In India, you have an active HIV.
We have an HIV/AIDS program
in India. So, so there are people who feel that there's one question. It's a slightly blunt question, that what is the USAID, what does the United States gets as by running this program across 100 countries? I mean, what is the United States getting in return?
That's a very good question. It's in the U.S. interest to have countries around the world that are growing economically, socially, are making progress on social development indicators like health and education, promotes stability. Our experience is countries that grow are better trade and investment partners for the U.S. They're more stable. They're less source of instability or threats, whether it's the spread of disease, the spread of refugees, trafficking in persons. Those are problems we want to avoid. We don't want those problems to come to our borders. But looking at it in a positive way, we found that in many countries where we've made investments with USAID projects, in fact, several countries in Africa and in Asia, where we've then seen economic growth, those countries become bigger trading partners for the United States, import and export. They're bigger partners for us in terms of making investments both ways. So it's in our economic interest as well.
But if this is true, if this were true, and this is actually for global good, this is for a generic global good, for promoting trade, then the USAID will not disengage and disappear after the immediate needs of the US politics are met. I mean, it has happened before as well. I mean,
we have disengaged.
We haven't, or you have?
We have. Countries that have made great progress.
Well, that's an evolution of the project.
Well, that's an evolution of the country, where with our support and the support of other countries, they've grown.
For instance, India.
They become self-sufficient. They don't need aid. They become, they're stable. They're good trade partners. They're good investment partners. I mentioned South Korea, Taiwan, Kazakhstan, in Africa, Botswana. South Africa is moving in that direction. We have everything to gain. USAID doesn't want to be providing aid to Pakistan for another 50 years.
I'm not asking this.
So, but we don't want to do that anywhere.
But in case of Pakistan, when the politics changes, when the political interest changes, then USAID stagnates. That the interest in the USAID in Congress finishes. So if the belief is in generic good, then the political interest will not shift. Why the nuclear program will become a problem in terms of aid. If the objective is to promote trade and self-sufficiency and stability, while the problems are still there, the USAID tap is switched off. I mean, the priorities change. So it becomes a political tool. No?
Well, USAID is an instrument. It is part of the U.S. government. It is one important tool for promoting U.S. foreign policy. I have to acknowledge that. But we have a convergence of U.S. interests and Pakistani interests in this area. It's in both of our interests for Pakistan to grow and to succeed, to be a stronger, more self-sustainable economy, more stable, at peace with its neighbors. We want that for Pakistan, and Pakistan, we believe, wants the same thing. It's a mutual interest.
So from this, one understands that you have to traverse and follow a difficult balancing act. Yourself being the country director for the last almost 2 years. How you managed to negotiate that path? I mean, from a personal account. I mean, you came here, the relationship got strained, you had a huge project. Just before in 2009, the Kerry Lugar bill in October 2009. So a few months after this, the relationship started to strain. You come as a country director, and you have all this challenge. What were your personal contributions? How you negotiated all that?
It's
some anecdotes as well, if you want to.
Sure. The relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan has many dimensions. But even if you look at governance within Pakistan and priorities within Pakistan, forget the United States for a minute. There are many priorities that your government faces, and they have to make choices, and sometimes they're in competition. It could be one ministry's budget competing against another ministry, short-term versus long-term. You make choices. Sometimes you have arguments, you make compromises. Similarly, the U.S. relationship with Pakistan, there are many dimensions. The dimension I focus on, and USAID focuses on, we believe is a noble one. It's in both countries' interest to promote the stability, the social and economic development of Pakistan. It's a good thing for Pakistan, and as I mentioned, it's in our American interest as well. But it is difficult because politicians tend to have a short-term perspective, whereas my agency, development, is a long-term enterprise. And development, if it's really going to take place and be self-sustaining, it's not just about building a school.
So how do you fight this?
It's about building host country capacity.
How do you convince the politicians who have short-term perspective that we need to have a long-term perspective? How do you?
Well, I shouldn't overgeneralize. We do have politicians who really are visionary. And I would say Kerry Lugar and Berman.
Kerry is an example.
Are long-term and they're visionary. We welcome congressional delegations when they come from the United States here, so that we can tell them our story, and it's even better if Pakistanis can tell them their story about why this is good or why it's important or what do we need to do to make it better. When I'm back in Washington, I go up to Capitol Hill and I try to explain. So more knowledge is good. We believe we have a good story to tell. And when I find that when congressmen come here and they visit our projects and we have a chance to introduce them to some of the really dynamic people in Pakistani society, both government and NGOs and business, they're often very impressed. And they say, well, I didn't know that. Well, that's good. You helped 9 million people during the floods get health care? I didn't know that. That's great.
So why Washington is always disappointed from USAID then?
They're not always disappointed. I wish they were happier with us more often.
Why are they less happier?
Well, part of it, obviously, is the other aspects of the U.S.-Pakistan relationship are been very turbulent. Whether it's counterterrorism, military-to-military relations, those are beyond USAID. And there's a history of ups and downs.
Washington doesn't understand that.
Well, Washington does, I believe. But politicians view things differently. a lot of international relations have